The views and opinions on Where Did the Road Go belong to those making them. Do not mistake allowing freedom of speech for agreement. This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by the following amazing individuals: Greg Ross, Billuminati, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, and Michael Frisky. Thank you all for helping to make this show possible. And if you'd like to help out, become a patron at wheredidtheroadgo.com. It's only $3 a month for lots of extra content.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight, for the first time in a while, I have both Saxon.
Hello.
And Chris.
Hello also.
You guys are now on schedules that make it very hard for you to appear together.
Yeah, I'll take most of the blame for that. It's the semester, and I'm doing my teaching duties. I mean, I get tired and grumpy.
It's 50-50. It's 50-50. I've had some different obligations that are a lot more inflexible than they used to be.
It's also that
saving the world is a tough one, and transforming into your, Super Saiyan self.
Right.
I think we're all to blame because I think there's 3 days that the two of you can do, and 2 of those days I have radio shows.
Oh, so it's your fault.
Yeah, it's partially my fault as well. So, yeah. But we're doing this because
I actually blame the government. I think that it's setting things up so we can't talk to each other, so we can't spread more of this truth.
That's it.
Spreading the truth by asking questions.
Exactly.
And what we got tonight are questions. And I had Patreons. I haven't done it in a while, but I told them to give us some AMA questions. Ask us anything. And as usual, I got some fantastic questions. And there's no way we're getting through it all in the show. So we might have to be in the Patreon. If there's too many, might have to be a second show. We'll see how it goes.
All right.
That sounds good to me.
Because my Patreons are awesome, and I actually genuinely mean that. They're super supportive, and they're smart people, and they ask great questions. And man, every time I do one of these, it's like, wow, these are really good questions. So, and I also put up all in the actual podcast feed now. I put up all the shows from 2013. To say that was tedious would be an understatement.
No kidding, right?
Right.
Apparently, I did 54 shows. I think it was 53 or 54 in 2013, and I didn't start till the end of January.
Oh, wow.
Because halfway through, I started doing a few midweek shows with Micah Hanks and Paul Kimball.
Okay,
yeah.
So
I remember those.
Yeah, and so initially that's what it was going to be, and they lasted for a little bit, and then we started doing roundtables, and then I just started doing shows, shorter shows here and there, and I mean, things are always changing, but I'm amazed at how much stuff got out in that first year. Like, I knew I had some great guests in the first year. Yeah, I mean, I had George Hansen in the first year. I had Patrick Harper in the first year. I had Randall Carlson on twice. I had, and that's before people knew who he was really, as far as like this, being on, people didn't really know him until he was on Joe Rogan with Graham Hancock.
Right.
Then people were like, oh, who's this Randall Carlson guy? I mean, he was doing plenty of stuff before that, but he didn't have the visibility. And I heard him on Red Ice Radio, I think it was. And I was just like, who is this guy? This guy is amazing. And then he came on twice. And then Robert Schock was on twice. I think Andrew Collins was on twice.
Yeah. Red Ice used to have a lot of stuff before they went all Sig Heil.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. They would have, because they had Graham Hancock on, they had Robert Schock on, they had all these ancient, they had Micah Hanks on. He had fantastic guests, and I like the fact that not only did he know the stuff, but he kept his mouth shut and let his guests talk.
Right.
Which was something that I tried to take from that. It's like, oh, no, I like this, know the stuff, but, let the guests get through with their thought, unlike some shows where they would just kind of talk over their guests. And I'd be like, why are you doing that? Like, and why aren't you following that up?
Yeah.
But it was in that first year that Paul Kimball was the one that brought up to me that hypnosis was not a memory recovery tool. And I was like, wait, what?
Mhm.
You know, like I didn't know this. What are you talking about? So there's a lot of stuff in that first year that I'm looking back at going, I mean, the sound on some of them is not good, because I was doing it over the telephone. I didn't have the microphone equipment that I have now and stuff like that. So I'm listening to the quality of some of them going, ooh, that sounds bad, but it's a good show. And,
I think it's totally worth it to put up there. People listen. There are people who want to hear it.
Yeah. I'm trying to put all the shows up there because people complain they can only listen to like, when it was just the RSS feed, you could only go back 50 shows. But with Acast, I think I can put the entire catalog on Acast. You'll be able to go back to the very first one with Jim Elvich back in January of 2013.
The universe solved.
Yep. And who else was it there? Laird Scranton was on. Man, there was someone else I was just thinking about that I was kind of surprised was the first year, and I can't remember who it was. No, it was both Mike Cleland and Aaron Gullius came out in the first year.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah. That early, huh?
Yeah, I didn't think it was that early, and I'm like, because it was before Mike wrote his owl book. I heard Mike on the Gralien report of Micah Hanks, and was like, immediately felt a connection with him, and I'm like, I need to talk to him. And his owl book wasn't done. He just had the blog and the Hidden Experience podcast and stuff, and I'm like, come on, let's talk about this. And then I had Aaron on because Paul Kimball published his book. And I was like, I brought Aaron on. And I'm like, wow, I really like this guy too. These two should go do a show together.
Yeah.
And hence UFO History was born.
Yeah.
So those are my favorite. I've found them on YouTube and sent them to so many people over the years.
I love them. They're great.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do the same thing with 2014 when I have a little time. It took me a long time to do this because it's tedious. Like I said, I have to sit there and I have to upload it. Then I got to put up all the data. Then I'm checking all the links because a lot of the links from back then no longer work.
See, this would be great stuff for people to program AI to do for you instead of making weird videos.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I love weird videos. Listen, but still.
But those, if you're listening on any kind of podcatcher now, those shows should be available, and they're at the beginning, they're published in 2013, so they appear at the oldest shows. They're not coming up as new shows, but they probably bombed a lot of people's feeds where they suddenly got 50 shows from 2013 in one day. Because I know Podcast Addict did it, because Acast is like, oh, this is a new show, so we're sending it out on the RSS, even though the publication date is like January 26th, 2013.
Right. Because you posted it. Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to do it. Actually, and David Paulides was on in that first year, on my birthday.
Oh, interesting.
So
Happy birthday, yeah.
The only two interviews I did that were 2 hours were Robert Schoch and David Paulides.
Okay.
Most of them are an hour. A few of them are an hour and a half, but most of them, initially it was meant to be an hour-long show. And I literally was recording them off the radio broadcast and then putting them up.
I can't imagine a 1 hour Where Did the Road Go?
Yeah. It's hard sometimes to keep it under an hour and a half. But yeah, there's a lot of ancient mysteries type shows on there. I think Gary Evans was on there. Brian Forrester, obviously, like I said, Robert Schoch, and Laird Scranton was talking about the Dogon stuff, because I'm very interested in that stuff, but I kind of lost touch with some, like, I ended up getting more and more paranormal stuff and less books on that stuff. So that's why, and a lot of the co-hosts of this show were more oriented toward UFOs and stuff like that.
I see.
So I think that's why the show took a more paranormal turn versus a Lost Civilization turn. And now I try to still get some Lost Civilization shows in there, but
it's good. I mean, that stuff, it doesn't stop being interesting.
No.
It doesn't. I guess the weird thing is I just don't know if we've had a lot of new Lost Civilization information coming in.
That's the thing.
Other than kind of like diving deeper on stuff that we're already aware of,
Yeah.
Right.
There
More
was
ancient cities found off the coast type stuff.
Yeah. I was going to say there was another one just off of Spain, a stone circle that was uncovered because of the drought conditions there.
Yep.
And dates back quite a long way. I want to say like 9,000 years, they're thinking.
Sure.
Wow.
And
well, I mean, again, if the water was lower, then it was probably frozen somewhere. So you're definitely talking about that ice age transition.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or younger Dryas, or
Yes.
however you want to characterize that. So
I mean, heck, there's all whatever existed in Doggerland before it, went under the ocean. There could have been plenty of stuff. And again, this is not like, when you say civilization, I'm not meaning like super futures like civilization, like crazy, skyscrapers and stuff. Could be, still a very, we would call it, I guess, primitive type of civilization. But, I think that there's so much that's out there underwater or buried under earth. Yeah. From long ago.
You raise a good point with that. That always kind of gets to me too when we talk about lost civilizations, because an ancient civilization that we're aware of now might call something that's lost, very advanced and what have you.
Yeah.
But it's relative to that ancient civilization.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean it would be the same as our contemporary world, It could still be an
even at the scale.
Society.
Yeah. Like that's one of the frequent criticisms that I disagree with of Graham Hancock is this idea, there are many, I think, that really sort of get him wrong. And I know there are a lot of people that really feel like he is very racist. I think it's he might be a privileged Englishman, but I really don't think that he is the way that people make him out to be. And this is from reading all of his books. But anyway, that, it's I've lost my train of thought, but the types of civilizations that he always talks about, he says this, it doesn't necessarily mean that this was some super advanced digital type, technologically advanced in the way that we are with computers or something like that. But if we as we generally as society globally acknowledge, I don't know, ancient Babylon or the Greeks or the Indus Valley civilization to be civilizations, there could be more of those.
Right. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Or something we don't even know about, which is also could be possible,
Mm-hmm. And they're showing, the thing about these structures, like in his second Ancient Apocalypse season, he's dealing with the Americas and showing that these stones, down in South America and stuff in Cusco we don't know how they did them. We simply do not know. They had some form of knowledge we do not have anymore that they used to build these things. And then they start the whole thing. We'll probably do a show on this at some point. But they start the whole thing with these footprints that were found in the White Sands Desert.
Those are great. Oh man,
date so back cool. Unequivocally. This is archaeology. This is not like pseudo archaeology. Date back to what, 13,000 years ago?
Yeah.
And it's like at a time period where it wasn't supposed to be populated. Well, guess what?
Right. Yeah.
So what do you do at that? Archaeology still doesn't want to acknowledge it because they're stuck on that. Nope. We know all the answers. We know how they came here. We know when they got here. And it's like, but you're wrong.
Yeah.
Why can't you accept that you're wrong and just go with the new information?
Right. Yeah. So many factors. It's difficult.
All right. So tonight, like I said, we're doing these AMA questions, and the very first one. Well, the first part of the first one is more for me. This comes from Matt in Delaware. He says, "Hi, Seriah. First, how is your memoir coming along? And do you have any dates in mind for when it would be released? I wanted to be released a few years ago. And then my hard deadline was Albatwitch of this year, so that didn't happen. So now I'm looking at May. I'm going for May. Whether or not that happens, we'll see. And it's only up to 1996. So then, assuming people actually like it and buy it, I'll do the second part, which will go to wherever I get to the point and go, oh my God, there's way too many words here. Because that's what happened with this one. At 1996, I'm like, this book is going to be way too long. I need to just stop and put it out.
We have to get somebody to find an auspicious election for you to launch it from an astrological standpoint.
Oh,
I've found that's to be good. If I can get somebody to give me a date that that is astrologically auspicious, I'm like, oh, that's a good deadline as any.
I'll just ask Ren.
Ask Ren.
Well, my goal with May is, of course, May 15th was the time period around which I was given the name Seriah. So,
right. Well, that makes sense too.
I'm thinking if I can get it out by like May 15th, that would be great. That would be a symbolic sort of date to release it around.
Nice.
So we'll see. So his second question is about all the recent discussions about UFOs coming from the oceans. What do you think about that idea? And assuming it is true, does that make it more likely these things are from Earth originally, or is it just as likely that they are from a far-off place in outer space? Thanks, as always, for the great show and for taking our questions. So, the USO, is that what it is? Undersea unknown submerged objects. That's
not Bing Crosby performing for the troops, but underwater, yeah. Not the USO, USOs.
So that is not new. That is something that has been around for as long as, the modern UFO era. Who's the guy who wrote,
or even ancient. I mean, what's the ancient myth from Japan is it Oskabune? I'm completely probably mispronouncing it.
Oh, where it washes up on shore. And
the woman in the like capsule.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is the name of the author? He wrote a book in the, I think, 70s. And, of course, now I'm looking up underwater UFOs, and all I'm getting is new stuff.
Damn you, Lou Elizondo.
What is he was a famous UFO writer, and I put in USO, and I get the Usos.
Yeah.
The wrestlers.
Yeah.
That is not.
I know what you're talking about, but I do forget that guy's name. I know the book you're talking about.
And I know where it is, but it's like 5 rooms away. So I can't just go grab it. But he wrote a book he was a friend of Keel's, and he wrote a book all about all the different UFO stories. There's one, I think, that starts the book about an unknown craft breaking through the ice of Antarctica when there was a ship off the coast of it. And like the captain witnessed it, was like, what the hell was that? It just like smashed through the ice and took off into the sky. And even Thor Heyerdahl, when he is crossing the ocean, there's a part in the book. Is it Kon-Tiki?
Kon-Tiki.
Yeah, where he says, they're sitting there and this glowing underwater thing is like under their raft, and they actually put it in the movie, I believe.
Yes.
So that was, and I think there's bits from Columbus, his journals talking about, weird sightings under the sea when they were coming to America. So, none of this is new. It's just, I think, new to a lot of people who haven't heard this stuff.
Right. And I think there's a lot of lore mixed in with it, too. Like the thing that that wonderful politician, Lauren Boebert, was recently asking about in her so eloquent UFO panel interrogation or whatever it was that she was doing. That whole myth that you guys, I'm sure, have heard before of the UFO like factory that exists. I think it's in the Bermuda Triangle or something like that. That basically it like 3D prints UFOs. Have you heard this?
I have not.
We might have talked about it on the show, but I think it started out on 4chan. And
it did it probably.
Yeah, and people have screenshotted most of it because it's all been taken down and posted on like Imgur and stuff like that, but it's supposed to be, the factory is supposed to move around, and
it's supposed to move around. Yes, sorry.
And purpose build, the UAPs, USOs, whatever that come out of it, and always seem to stop anything from getting too close to it.
Right.
And it's interesting when that started circulating. To my knowledge, maybe like a year ago, if that sounds right, Chris. It was it really caught on after that in some of those places.
Oh, it did. And that's absolutely where I think that Boebert got it from. I mean, like it's in that kooky, like super baked QAnon world that she sort of has her toe in, that I think that's where that sort of story became, more in the public sphere too, I think, through social media and 4chan and like you're talking about. Yeah. There's also too, I mean, in terms of current USO lore, I feel like one of the other big things recently was the base that was like off of Malibu that people found on Google Earth, or base. I say that in air quotes.
Right.
These anomalies that people are finding, but in particular, there is this one that it looked like, there was one that looked like the Millennium Falcon. That was someplace else.
That was over like the Mediterranean or something.
No. That was up off the coast of like Norway or something.
Okay. Yeah, but then there was like the Malibu USO base, which I still see people, talking about that on like Reddit and, people doing stuff. I'm sure Linda Moulton Howe is going to do a story on it sometime soon.
So the fun thing about the USO stuff, if you build something that can go across space, it can certainly handle water. Because
not necessarily.
You would think if you've got an enclosed environment that can preserve life, then it would be fine underwater.
But here's the thing: if something goes into space, it's dealing with zero pressure versus underwater, where you're dealing with massive pressure. So it's not necessarily the case.
And I've heard that too, Seriah. But I feel like one has to go beyond that and think like, okay, if we're talking about these crafts that already can perform at in ways that we don't understand, you got to think of, and here it goes back to one of the better UFO movies from the 1980s, Flight of the Navigator. Think of that. Think of the performance, the way that craft worked. And I feel like that's more what one has to think about, where you're talking about technology that has so far beyond the idea of pressure, but it is, in the way that you're saying, Saxon, if it's encapsulating you and able to accelerate and using some exotic means, that yes, it would be able to sort of navigate if it's in some sort of like electromagnetic gravity bubble or whatever, if you're trying to nuts and bolts
stuff around you. If you're in structural space, 3D space that we know it, you can't hit anything going that fast because it would go through you.
Right.
So it's got to have something going on that would move that around. And so I just assume that it would be strong enough if this is a hypothetical like nuts and bolts situation. But it's great because it's hard to keep track of everything that's going on in the oceans. So if you were trying to observe, it'd be a good place to do it.
And hey, then there's also if we wanted to take some speculative fiction and go with James Cameron's 90s opus, The Abyss, there are literally like underwater civilizations like Atlantis style, but not sunken. They're just, like fishmen or women or,
And then I would always, pull out, Mac Toney's Crypto Terrestrial too.
Yep.
Anybody that thinks or, brings up, are these things local, it's worth reading that book is, his thought experiment of like, it's possible for something to hide on this planet. I don't know. It's very interesting. So I appreciate a lot of the USO ideas. If I were a nuts and bolts person, I would certainly think that that's probably where they're operating out of, the ocean. I mean,
And for as much as, I think that I'll make fun of the silliness of that Lauren Boebert as a particular politician, that is my own, opinion. I do think that, the kind of like ironic thing about it is that she is raising a question which is very valid in the limits of us exploring our own oceans. Like, I think the context and sort of the reasons behind why she's talking about it are completely self-serving and, addled, baked. But I do think that there is something to that, as with a lot of these questions that are being put out there very publicly, in this kind of weird political sphere about UFOs and stuff like that. These are very valid questions about, why don't we know more about our own oceans, or, why don't we know more about this or that, which is true.
Yeah. I'm still looking for the name of the guy who wrote that book, because I highly recommend it, and I cannot find his name to save my life. Like, I'm looking through Goodreads, which has all my books on it. Well, not all of them, because I stopped updating at some point. But it should have that one in there, because I've had that book since before I started the show. And I can't find his book. And it's driving me crazy here.
I'll have to look. Here, I think because I just looked in mine. Are we talking about Invisible Residence,
Yes.
The Reality of Underwater by Ivan T. Sanderson?
That's it, Sanderson.
Yes.
Yes, highly recommend that.
Yeah, it is. It's a good one.
And I think, the way he asked this question, which is assuming it's true, does it make them more likely to come from Earth originally? I think whatever this thing is, or at least, I think it's a lot of things, but I think the primary thing that we're looking at is something that probably has coexisted with us all along. I don't think it's likely from outer space, but I also don't think it necessarily is restricted to here. It might be something, I hate using the word interdimensional, but something popping in from a form of reality that we're not familiar with or can't always perceive, and hence may not play by the same rules that we have to play with in this reality, because they're hacking it, because they're coming in from a different angle. They're from outside.
that has been talked about in the wild world of speculative physics is the idea that, or theoretical physics, is that physics can be different. There could be different physics in different sort of planes of existence.
Right.
Then that is that is to some degree accepted. It's just that nobody has any idea of how to go about measuring or figuring out if these things are real. But if they were, then yes, there could be different physics.
Well, they're also talking about potentially different physics in our own universe if we go far enough away from where we are, because we don't know if physics work the same way. And see, the dog agrees.
He does.
He does. Sorry.
Dog's like, you got it.
Fox outside. Yep.
Dog's like, you figured it out. Or the fox is telling us by making the dog bark. But yeah, I feel like outer space is the least likely of explanations. Like, as far as like nuts and bolts aliens flying here, I'm sure there's life in outer space. There may be intelligent life in our own galaxy, but I don't know that they're coming here in nuts and bolts spaceships. And if there's life in our galaxy, I don't think it's life that we would recognize right off the bat.
Right. There were some very specific and strange comments that came out of the mystic Zoroastrian Sufi Vedantic sphere that I have some knowledge of from the mystics that I grew up, sort of studying and reading about. And it said through that, a lot of that literature, that there's a couple of interesting things. One, that the way outer space works, and this is, again, very nebulous sort of poetic type of, responses that are being given by these mystics and written down by somebody else in like the 1930s. So take with it what you will, but that the number is used more than once of 18,000 worlds that are inhabited by human-like creatures, and I don't even know if the word human was used, but creatures like us or something like that. And then very specifically that outer space works in a way that we don't quite understand yet, but our scientists are close to understanding and have some idea of. And it's the concept that things are not necessarily as far or close as we understand them in terms of how outer space works. I guess once you leave the Earthen sphere. And I don't know what that means. These are very nebulous statements made by mystics 100 years ago. But yeah, I've always found that to be interesting. It makes me think about some of the stuff that we kind of know now about space.
But as far as USOs go, I mean, yeah, when you mention, we don't know our own oceans, it's very, very true. And, every time they do some of this, they found the extremophiles, for example, on the volcanic vents in the ocean where we didn't think life could exist. We've found them under the ice in Antarctica. Life thrives, like it finds a way to thrive on whatever environment it's in. So there's no reason to think that Earth is somehow unique in this, and that life couldn't be thriving in the depths of Saturn or Jupiter or Uranus or even Pluto. I mean, because it doesn't necessarily have to be, like sentient necessarily, although who knows what sentient is anymore. Like we find more and more that things we thought weren't sentient appear to be sentient, like bees. Bees play with balls what was it that they were giving them? They were just playing with them. Well, playing assumes a level of sentience versus a level of just roboticism, of just survival.
Right. Yeah.
So, at what point do we say one thing is sentient and what is not? So, I mean, but not necessarily maybe intelligence that is building stuff, that we would recognize.
Yes. Yep.
It might have like dolphins and there's plenty of animals that have culture basically, but they're not building anything because they don't necessarily need to build anything.
Right.
And then there's also, things like crows who use tools. We not too long ago, we would have said birds can't use tools, but here we have, birds using tools.
Yeah. Oh, sure. They have funerals. I mean, you guys see that? Anyway, if people didn't see that, there was some sort of nature study that was done that found that crows have a form of funereal like remembrance for their people from their murders that pass. Very interesting.
So yeah, I mean, life is so nebulous. It's so all-pervading, I think. And, of course, you also have the fact that life tends to, like in our bodies, we have other life thriving that is also part of us, but is not technically us, not as a conscious being. So where do you draw those lines? I don't think you really can. You just have to arbitrarily pick a point and say, well, we're looking for life that has these characteristics.
Sure, yeah.
And if there is life out there, traveling in a nuts and bolts spaceship may not be the answer to how you get here. Like if they could find us and they actually wanted to interact with us, it might be on a whole different type of interpolation into our reality. Interpolation, I think is the word I'm looking for, where they're poking into our reality from where they are.
Yeah, totally.
If we jump to the Seth material, Seth said the first modern contact with an alien species would be in like sometime in the 2000s, early 2000s it was, I think, and they said it would be psychic communication with someone in Australia, and it wouldn't be recognized for what it was.
Interesting. Well, that's fascinating. That's one thing also too from sort of that material I was talking about before, is that there's this talk of how many of the worlds that we're not in touch with that have similar type of life to us, that they have a lot more intelligence but a lot less emotion. And that they were a lot of this stuff that we sort of speculate, a lot of people speculate about, and that telepathic, being able to speak telepathically is part of that.
Yeah. I mean, and also, is it a lot less emotion or more control over their emotions?
No, it's less, not control. It's more, it's more like the initial depiction of Vulcans. Like, I think Vulcans have now become more about that they are controlling their emotions. Yes, but originally, I think in the way that they were put together, they didn't have them. So it was more like Vulcans in that sense. Yeah.
Interesting.
It was just not a part of their like physiological makeup, or however, whatever their bodies were, the emotions were not as strong as they are in human beings. And this is similar to the stuff that I had read.
All right. But I definitely, like I said, I definitely recommend that book, The Underworld. What was the name of it again, Chris? Because I've already forgotten.
Invisible Residents.
That's it. If you want to look more into that, that's a good book because it happened, that came out. Do you happen to have the release date on it? Because I want to say it was the 70s. And then it was republished by, I think, David Hatcher Childress's book company.
I have the version that's the David Hatcher Childress version, and it's says 2005. So I'm looking. Yeah, I can't see it. Sorry. Yeah. I put mute on. I didn't realize it was on.
Let's non-invisible gorilla. That's a different thing that people should also read. Apparently, books with invisible on it are must-reads. Okay, so let's see. Amazon, Invisible Residents, and Reality of Underwater UFOs by Sanderson. And is there a publication date? 2005. That is incorrect. Well, again, it's probably
Childress reprint. Yeah.
So I think it came out in the 70s. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was an older book. And this looks like the original version of it, too. That's the weird thing.
Yeah. I have another version of it here, too. Let me open it up and see if this has something in it. This is a different publisher. Yeah, 1970. Yep.
Okay. I wonder if it's the same one. It's literally probably the same one I just found because it's titled differently.
It's titled differently. It's titled just Invisible Residents, the one that I have, and it's got a different cover. I have so many PDFs. It's hard for me to look through them. And this it just says Invisible Residents. Is there intelligent life beneath the waters of the earth? From 1970.
Yeah, so this one actually says startling evidence for the possibility of intelligent something, and then it trails off and it doesn't show me the rest. But there's yet another one that says Invisible Residents, a disquisition upon certain maritime matters and the possibility that intelligent life is under the waters of this earth.
Apparently there are many versions of this.
Yeah, that one came out in 71, that version.
Okay.
So that's interesting. Okay, so the other one says startling evidence for the possibility of intelligent life underwater by a distinguished naturalist and scientist.
Distinguished.
in Fortiana, he is definitely distinguished.
He is, absolutely. Okay, yeah, I have this is a weird one that was published in Britain that I have, but it has the original copyright. It's 1970.
Nice. Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
So yeah, I mean, I read that, like I said, I read that before I started doing Where Did the Road Go? And I was like, I love this book. And then I got, I think, Things and More Things from him and wasn't as impressed because it was just kind of weird stuff people found that washed up on shore. And I was like, a lot of these are kind of explained. So it's like, it's weird, but it's not like as compelling as the USO book. So
this one's a really good one. If I remember, I haven't read it in a long time, but it's got really good stories, which is nice.
Yeah. All right. That was question 1, and we're almost halfway through the show. So question 2, well, technically there were 2 questions because you did ask about the autobiography. So question 2 from A Crocodile, and it's put together so AC is, there's no space, so it's A Crocodile, I guess.
Is the question, what is it like to be warm-blooded?
No, the question, well, the comment they make, is I'm fascinated by the idea of digital consciousness and ideas of transhumanism. Things such as human minds being uploaded into machines. If such a thing were ever possible, what do you think that might mean for what happens to the soul of a person who dies but has their mind digitally uploaded? Would it be tied to the personality in the machine or pass on as it would normally? Be earthbound, perhaps? I know that it's probably a larger question since it ties into the whole what is a soul issue. I'm just curious as to how you or any of your guests have ideas on the topic. Thanks for doing such an awesome show. All right. So that we've touched on this many times, and my feeling on it is that you can't replicate a human brain in a machine. At least not at this point. And I don't know if you ever can. Like, there's something special about organic beings, and I don't know that we can, like, I think whatever our soul is contains part of what we know and who we are. And it's not just stored in like the brain where you can just hook it up, transfer everything in the brain, and there you are. I don't think it works like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and this is probably an analogy that maybe to move away from just because it's kind of outdated, but I do think, like you could build, even if we were able to build a identical, organic object that is like a human brain, that is sort of, ideal. Let's say in the future, we're able to come up with organic 3D printers, and we map every atom of the human brain, and we have an atomic printer that's able to print it. I still don't necessarily think that you would get consciousness because of that. Like, it would still be like the radio without any radio waves.
Right.
And I don't, and again, like, I think that metaphor of the radio waves maybe is a bad one to use. But yeah, I think that it would be very, I agree with you, Seriah, and I don't think necessarily even that if you were to create a identical human body or a brain or whatever, that you would necessarily get life out of it. That there's something else going on, some other mechanism or force or, natural laws that are happening with organic life as, we see it in nature that we don't have, unless you were to, I guess, use maybe magical or spiritual means. You would have to go into being like Dr. Doom, not just Tony Stark.
Right.
If people want to go into a comic book thing here, being that Tony Stark is all tech, it's all tech, and Dr. Doom is tech and magic.
I got
you. Right.
Go ahead, Saxon.
Well, I agree with everything y'all have said. And, it depends on what the soul is, too, right? Yeah. Like, I think we could have a chat bot that approximates somebody's, personality or something like that. But, if it's a quantum function, and again, I'm just, because people just use quantum or whatever. It doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
But, assuming this is some quantum occurrence, which I don't think that's what it is, you could conceivably trap that because it's energy, right? And that would be a little freaky to me. But, like I say, I think that's reductionist, and I think that's us trying to, like, explain something we really can't explain. So I don't think it would either. I think that, talking about, like, if you were to clone a brain or a body or whatever, kind of like being, like having a car without gas.
Yeah.
It's just there. It's just organs.
Well, sort of. Yeah.
So there's in the Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, he talks about these little robots that they made and how, not that he made, but that scientists made when they were studying robotics and stuff. And how, although all the robots were made exactly the same, and they were fairly basic little robots, but they would interact with people. And some of them would be really shy, and some of them would be very outgoing, and their responses were supposed to be random, but they weren't random. They ended up actually developing what seemed to be personalities, even with this very simplistic structure. And so, his question was like, are they on some level conscious? Because they're responding in a way that is non-random, even though their responses are supposed to be random.
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as us uploading to a machine, I don't know that would work because our consciousness is not made to work in a machine. But if we made an exact duplicate of a human, it might show signs of a different type of consciousness.
That's true. I mean, sure, a different type of consciousness. Yeah.
When you think about life on Earth, there is an unbroken line between the first life to everything that is alive today. It's passed on through reproduction nonstop.
Yep.
There's never been a break in it. So you might be able to create something that a form of consciousness inhabits, but it may not be life like we're alive. And what that spark of life is, I don't know. I mean... Yeah. And I've referred to this before because I thought this is a very unique story that deals with this. The Everlasting Stories podcast, back the first episodes they put out in 2019 were called Titan Station. And in that, there's only five episodes. And then he goes on to other stories. But those 5 episodes are fantastic. And not only are they good sci-fi, but in it, there is an actual AI that's actually intelligent. And he has an avatar. And at one point, one of the characters is like, well, what is this avatar? And he says, well, it's me. I was formerly a human and I died. And I reincarnated into this AI, into this computer, because it's the only computer that's ever been made dynamic enough to hold a human consciousness.
Sure.
And because of that, he could remember everything because the computer, unlike a human brain where it doesn't remember really very much at all, the computer remembered everything. So he remembered his entire past life from when he incarnated, and the avatar was him in that life.
Oh, interesting.
And I thought that was brilliant because I'd never seen it dealt with like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that way of thinking about consciousness is, for me at least, seems to be the most correct, is that, the body is a vessel that something else inhabits. So yeah, I mean, in theory, one could make, if you were to make an appropriate medium, that consciousness could, put on that medium. But I do think there's more of a linkage to the way that our bodies are as sort of like being incredibly customized to our particular consciousness. And, that's again, because I do believe in there being some sort of reincarnation and some sort of review and repetition that happens very similar to what, you find in many Eastern religions, or even, what you hear about in some Western channeled stuff. So because I think that, it does seem to me that, that if you were to create, a vessel that was, created not biologically through the known birth.
Chris just went silent.
Oh, no. But, I understand where he was going with that, because it's... There he is. Well. Oh, wow.
Well, that's interesting.
What an effect. Oh, my gosh.
I am not editing this out of the show. The fact that we're talking about digital consciousness and that's happening.
Oh, I know, right? Oh, my gosh.
I wonder what Chris is experiencing on his end right now.
Yeah, I know. You think he's just like, he's moved on and he keeps talking and wondering why we're quiet? Or is he hearing us and that?
I don't know. We may have to stop and get him back, because I don't think this is going to end. Oh, no, okay.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, there was a split second. It sounded like it shifted, but yeah, no joy. Oh, my gosh.
Maybe if we hang up on him. Can you hang up on him, Saxon?
Let me see if I can.
Because it's on the other side of the room for me.
I can see if I can remove from call call. Okay, he just texted, I'm here. Weird. Let's see.
Yeah, we're hearing the word birth replayed over and over again. So, Chris, if you can hear us, maybe disconnect and reconnect.
Yeah. I was just about to type in that.
There he goes.
There he goes. Perfect.
Oh, what did he say to us?
He laughed. Said, I'm here, weird, ha. And then I think he heard us.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So he should be back or something.
Because I'm wondering why it stopped. That was bizarre.
Yeah. I assume he's left already, but he's lingering. Oh my God. All right. I'm going to see if I can remove him from the call. I'm going to try it. Let's see.
All right. That is
there we go.
One of the weirdest things that has happened on a Skype session.
Right? I hope he can get back in. It said I kicked him out. Oh, well, we'll find out.
Huh.
Yeah. But, go ahead, Seriah.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to his point, like, as we were talking about that before we got where we were, I was thinking, like, yeah, if you built the right kind of device, kind of like you were talking about reincarnating, if it would be habitable to a soul in some way, would you just have new things showing up that you didn't even plan on?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that would certainly be something, too.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, now we
sure
can. Wait,
yes.
Oh my God, that was insane. I have no idea what happened, yo. That was really weird.
What were you hearing on your end?
Nothing was muted. What happened is that I was talking about the digital consciousness. All of a sudden I heard these weird beeps coming from the Skype, or I don't know. It sounded like it was coming from your mic, Saxon. And then you guys couldn't hear me. Very strange.
Oh, fascinating.
So from
I tried rejoining, like quitting and rejoining twice. I had to basically shut the computer down and start it up again. It was very strange.
So we
had to kick you out.
Yeah, what we were hearing was you saying the word birth over and over again.
What?
It was just like birth, 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 birth. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm leaving that in the show.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like,
all right.
Like an industrial musician could sample that.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh,
well, it was like Valis was like interfering or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I seem to have some sort of
Oh
no. Oh.
Well, he's not echoing now.
Yeah.
If
there he is.
Oh dear God.
Huh. Well, I don't know what to do there. Okay, now he's gone again. All right. Let's see.
There he is. Oh God.
I can't. Oh my God. We're gonna take a break and we're gonna come back. I'm gonna restart this call.
Okay.
We're gonna go to a question from 36 Dingo, and if anyone wants to know why he's named 36 Dingo, go listen to the Alba Twitch episode, because he is on there telling us the amazing story of how he got the name 36 Dingo.
Yes.
Nice.
So the first question's pretty simple. You've befriended Bill and Ted. You can now instantly teleport to any place and time. Where are you going and why? Man, that's hard.
Oh, I know exactly where I'm going.
Where?
I'm going to Egypt 12,000 years ago. I'm going to what would be Egypt 12,000 years ago.
So what is it? It's first time, but what is the Egyptian phrase for it?
Oh God. Yeah. The name, it's
is it
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Something Atu, maybe?
Yes, it's something like that.
But it means first time.
It's something like that. Yes, exactly. The first time, the before time. Or I guess I'd do it in to see what was going on, maybe in South Central America, Mesoamerica at that time.
Or jump back 30,000 years and go to like Southeast Asia.
Right? Oh my God, there's so many places we could go.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. So as soon as you said 30,000 in Southeast Asia, I was like, it wouldn't be bad to go check out Australia when the Aborigines first got there, which, depending on who you talk to, is 30,000 years ago.
Right.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
is what we were talking about.
Yeah, Zep-Tepi. Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, that, or, you know, there was this cool show called the Texas Thrash Fest in Houston that I have video of, and I think it's the best concert I definitely was not at. So maybe that, yeah, you know, if we can make a side trip and go watch that concert live, that would be cool.
That would be cool. I'd be down for that.
It was violence, nuclear assault, overkill, and testament all at their peak. And it was like the video. You can find video of it on YouTube. I had a VHS tape that I got from tape trading, and it's just a camcorder from 1988 recording this, and it sounds. I mean, violence. The vocals are a little too loud in it, but the other bands all sound fantastic. The audience is nuts. So that'd have to be on my list if I could make a list. If it was only one place. Yeah, I couldn't pick that one, but if I could pick a few, it would be some of those. Let's solve these ancient mysteries. Oh, and also let's go see the Texas Thrash Fest. So the second one from 36 is you appear to be immune to fear. That's not actually true. Is there any event that has or could scare you, and if so, why or how? So I'm not immune to fear. It's that I've learned to repress the fear instinct, that fight or flight instinct. So I have plenty of practical fear, like concern about like if something weird happens to my body and I go, oh, is there something wrong? Nope, it was just stress. Okay, cool.
Sure.
But, you know, health issues, obviously, create some sense of fear. You know, I've been in a perpetual state of being behind in property taxes, which could hypothetically, hopefully we'll never come to it, but I could lose my house, which is, you know, not just where I live, but where I record everything and, you know, we do all the stuff out of. It would be a massive disaster for my life. So that's a fear. But when we're talking paranormal stuff, pretty much anytime I had sleep paralysis, I was in a state of fear. I don't know why sleep paralysis does it, but and I suspect that is why people get such negative imagery from sleep paralysis. And as on top of that, there have been times like when I did the ritual on the back hill, and I tapped the staff I had with me 3 times on the ground. It wasn't audible. And then exactly in that cadence, 3 knocks came from the spooky barn on my property. Like I went tap, 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 and the barn went tap, tap, 3 knocks, knock, knock, knock. And I went, oh, you had to come from that barn, didn't you?
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I forced myself to walk past that barn to go back in rather than going the long way around the big barn. Because that was not lack of fear. I was barely able to do it. I had to force myself to walk past that. But that's the thing. Like, I'd been in so many, like, these sort of dreams where I'm taught things. And one of those things they taught me was how to kind of repress that fear instinct and just kind of, you know, not go into fight or flight and instead analyze the situation, you know, make a more informed response, which usually serves me well. When the tree almost fell on me in the dark and I went, what's that noise? Instead of, you know, running to get out of the way. Not such a good thing, but luckily the tree missed me. So yeah, it's not immune to, I'm by no means immune to fear. You know, there's different levels of fear, and, you know, things like the barn knock was definitely one of those top moments of like paranormal fear where I was like, oh my God, you know, like what just knocked? It's fine. I can walk that way, can't I? Yep, maybe. And also the whole thing with the sort of evil corn monkey that Joshua Cutchin likes me to talk about.
Oh yeah,
that whole thing that freaked me the hell out. I couldn't even walk in that part of the property for a while.
Right.
Because that scared the hell out of me. Even though I was like, it was probably just pareidolia, you know, from the moving, you know, corn and everything. I was freaked the hell out. So yeah, there are definitely events that can scare me. I'm not as afraid of paranormal stuff as I am, you know, dealing with people sometimes, you know,
Sure. Yeah, right.
Like someone pulling a gun would scare me. I would probably remain calm and try to talk them down and talk them into putting the gun away. But like, it's not because I wouldn't be scared. It's because I would be able to just like, it's almost dissociative is what it is.
Right. Yeah.
It's like I kind of dissociate a little bit. So I feel the fear. It's there, but I'm not responding to it. That's kind of what I was taught. It's like how to dissociate a little bit.
Right. But isn't there I mean, also if you think about, and I guess I don't feel like there are enough anecdotes or stories or anything that I find to be like really valid where people do get hurt honestly, in terms of like real supernatural stuff, like most of the time, I was going to say like you take the missing 411 stuff, but I think that's a whole other ball game going on there. I don't actually think that there's a lot of supernatural danger that's out there. Well, aside from maybe the danger, like in terms of the same way that, like, I don't know, a cougar is dangerous.
Right.
Like dealing with discarnate spirits is a whole other type of danger, but it's more like psychic, I guess.
Yeah. It's not an acute danger. It's not going to stab you in the chest at that moment.
Right.
But you could have like bad juju around you for, a given period of time.
You're right. Yeah.
So you figure there are poltergeist cases where people have been hurt. They're rare, but they do exist.
Sure.
There's like the entity case, if that was reported accurately, even the one that the first Conjuring was built on, the woman who actually, one of the girls who was in the house, even though she said the Conjuring movie had literally no resemblance to what really happened to them, and what happened to them was actually worse. But where that's coming from, where that negativity is coming from is another question. But you also have some of the, especially in South America, UFO reports where people, like the one guy had his skin melt off him.
Yep.
Right. So it's rare. Most paranormal stuff turns out to be fairly harmless, but there are a few occasions where people have been irradiated or suffered some kind of radiation burns, or like that guy that literally, like, painlessly, his body just fell apart.
Right. Yeah.
Luckily for him, painlessly.
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry, Russ.
I was just going to say, I think maybe some of that, like, the reputation you get of no fear is from sort of how you have been, at least through the show, going on to places that are reputably, haunted, or in the same way that somebody goes in investigative, ghost hunts or something like that. And, I mean, having been with you in a couple of those situations, you don't seem scared. I'm not scared either. I mean, I think that, there's a particular type of, particularly when it's like a ghost hunt or going to a place where there's been, some type of phenomena. I guess I don't think of it as being something that is there that is dangerous. It's more exploratory. So I don't have this fear that I would if I were, like, I don't know, trying to get a photograph of a tiger or something. Like, it's a very different type of feeling.
Well, and a lot of stuff that frightened, other people I was with didn't frighten me. So there's just some stuff like the tree shaking thing. My biggest concern was that we were dealing with a buck that might try to maul us like that. And I wasn't afraid of it. I was just like, okay, how do we react to not have this thing charge us when we're on the edge of a cliff,
Yeah.
Right.
Which might be, let's drop down the cliff. I mean, it's a fairly steep cliff, but it's not a dead drop. And I did walk off that cliff before. So, like, that didn't frighten me. And when I realized there's nothing on the other side, it frightened me even less, and it fascinated me more than scared me. But the other two people I was with were terrified. We do have to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Quick mid-show break here. First of all, contact info, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. That's wheredidtheroadgo.com. And everything can be found there. Also, all of our social media links, emails, stuff like that. If you want to submit a story, it's stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. That's where you send an email to. You could also contact me directly through the little pop-up that comes onto the page when you first open it up. That goes directly to me. All right, recommendation. I'm kind of shocked I haven't recommended this before. And I was going through all the podcasts I've loved over the years, looking for something, because I haven't listened to anything really new that has struck me. But I went down my list and I did not see this on the list of stuff I've recommended before. And this is a podcast called Spines. It comes up as Spines Podcast, I think, by Zoom Doom Stories. And this is the same woman who did Mirrors. I think there was another one too. But it's a very weird story. And I really, really enjoyed it. It has an end. So it's not, in fact, there's one of the podcasts I think is the complete series. It's only Patreon only. But yeah, I mean, you can listen to the whole thing. And like I said, it has an end. It's a great story. It's very unique and original. And I enjoyed it quite a lot. All right, so that's my recommendation for this week. Now back to the show. So I'm here with Super Inframan and Christopher Ernst.
I'm still here.
Yeah, sort of. We're
still here.
We're here with a very weird version of Chris who might actually be an AI. We're not sure.
Right. Yeah. I was talking about that. Yeah. No consciousness. But maybe I'm lying. Maybe it's all a front to throw you off the scent.
It's that yeah. Anyway,
Chris's digital avatar.
So yeah, we were talking about fear and how I'm not actually immune to it, but I do have a different reaction to it, and I do sort of have this dissociation a lot of times when I feel that fear surging up. There have been a couple of times in dreams too that I feel like I was trying to be shown something. I talked about one of these recently because the one that comes to mind, it was two, but I don't remember what the second one was now. The first one was quite a few years ago, and I was like with this woman and this kid, this little girl or whatever. We were ghost hunting in this house, and there was a stairway going up, and the woman's like, you can't go up there. And I'm like, what do you mean I can't go up there? And the girl was really freaking out about how I shouldn't go up there. And I was like, why? And they're like, it's bad. Don't do it. So, of course, I went up there.
You got to go.
And about halfway up the stairs, I was filled with like a level of fear that I can't even like explain. It was one of the worst feelings I've ever had in my life. And I'm in a dream state. And I'm just like, holy crap. And they're like, come back down. And I'm like, no, I'm already halfway up these stairs. I'm getting to the top. And it felt like pushing against a force to get the rest of the way up to the top of the stairs. And when I went through the door on the top of the stairs, the whole place becomes this sort of like interdimensional sort of rooms and stuff like that. I don't remember all the details, but that feeling was palpable. I mean, in a way that I have never felt in normal consciousness. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what to make of that. Because you feel emotions in dreams, but generally not like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was weird.
I've also experienced in dreams having, really acute emotions that oftentimes, stick with me to the, like, it's almost like you feel like you're kind of waking up from another life and you still have the after image of that.
Yep.
And it sticks with me for a really long, like I'll be really unsettled for an entire day because I still have, and a lot of times these are sort of negative dreams that have some, fear or emotions of despair in it.
It's funny because like I like the dream world. The only time I tend not to like the dream world, I don't tend to have like nightmares very often. Although some of the dreams I have would probably be nightmares to some people. Like I almost look at them as watching a horror movie. And sometimes write them down for possible story ideas. But like when I wake up, even if the dream wasn't all that interesting, I'm always kind of like, oh, but I want to go back. I like that feeling of being in the dream. And,
I understand that. I feel the same way too.
Yeah. The only exception is when I start getting like repeated what seem like subconscious junk dreams, like, oh, I'm going to work, or I'm late for work, or I'm late for school, or whatever, and I'm like, and I wake up and I'm all annoyed, and it's like, okay, I don't want to go back to sleep to that one.
Yeah, I totally.
Yeah.
So, all right. So the third question that 36 Dingo has asked us is, if the universe itself had to answer one yes or no question that you asked it, what would you ask?
One?
One.
Don't do this to me, man.
And it has to be a yes or no question.
Right?
Like I don't even know where to start on that one.
Can you microwave a burrito so hot that you yourself cannot eat it? Sorry, it's from The Simpsons.
That's a great one.
Can Jesus microwave a burrito so hot?
I was trying to think of some recipe that I would love to have.
But it has to be a yes or no answer.
Well, that's true. It's a yes or no. Oh, crap.
Is there a reason for all this?
Yeah.
But then what if you get no?
Right.
Well, I was going to say, like, I don't know if I want the answers to any deep questions. I'd rather, explore and find them out on my own than, be told.
Is anything Louis Elizondo saying true?
Yeah,
right. There's a good one.
Right.
Of course, the answer would be yes, because clearly some of what he's saying is true.
Right.
But,
Right. Well, which parts?
You're right. It might only be 10%. But, I wouldn't.
Yeah. It's a cool idea, but if you really, think through the ramifications of it, too, any of, the mysteries of life, or the universe or whatever, we think of all these things. Yeah. I don't know if I would want it just, a yes or no kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it can. I don't think it can be. I think you probably could only, ask for something that exists in the realm where yes or no are relevant. Because I think that, when it comes down to it, what's really going on is so far out of our ability to conceptualize that, like, it's the old trope of, like, you really, the secrets to the universe, your brain explodes.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I would ask, am I where I'm supposed to be? Because if I got no, then I'd be like, okay, then I need to do some deep, like meditation searching to figure out why I'm not. And if I got yes, then I'd be like, okay, continue as I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a good one. I like that because it's not answering one of those ultimate questions, but it gives you data to act on.
Right. So Sam Sharon says, if you could interview anyone on your show who's still alive, who would it be? Of course, let us know why and what you'd love to ask them. Also, how can we make this happen for you? So I had to think about this one for a while.
Yeah. Wow.
So
that's a cool question.
Yeah. And I mean, my initial gut reaction was Graham Hancock. Because when I started this show, I said, no one is going to care because I'm delving into this stuff a lot deeper than most of these shows are. I'm not just going to do scary stories or anything. I was wrong, happily. But I said to myself, well, at least if I get to talk to Robert Schoch, Andrew Collins, and Graham Hancock on the show, I'll be thrilled. Like that was my baseline thing, And I had Robert on twice. I've had Andrew on like 5 times. I've never actually had Graham on. I was on the telethon for John Anthony West with him and talked to him, but I never actually had him on the show. He said he would come on when we did that telethon. That was, I don't know how many years ago now. And I've been considering writing him now that the second Ancient Apocalypse is out and having him on. But I also feel like with Graham, he's so out there. In the sense that he's so public. He's talked about all this stuff so much that I don't know if I had him on, would it be a unique interview?
Sure.
It's almost it's like when Project Archivist had Stanton Friedman on and they didn't want to talk about UFOs because everyone's already heard that already. They wanted to talk about his time as a nuclear physicist. Like, what can I talk about with Graham that he hasn't already said 1 million times everywhere else?
Right.
And so I'm like, although I still really like to have Graham on, if he's saying anyway, I think the answer to that occurred to me would be Jenny Randles. I have reached out to Jenny Randles a handful of times. She has never responded to me. She doesn't really do interviews as far as I can tell.
Not really.
She was starting to do, because she kind of took a hiatus from the field to take care of a loved one, I think, who was older, like a parent or something. I'm not sure exactly. I don't remember. But she's been back and occasionally posts on Twitter and had a new website. And like I said, I reached out and got no response. And I was just like, but she has written such amazing stuff. And so, like, why is that she is one of the most open-minded ufological minds and one of the most underrated. Like, everyone knows Jacques Vallée, everyone knows John Keel, but not everyone knows who Jenny Randles is.
Right.
And it's her books, like, there's some are better than others, but she's not afraid to go out there and just throw an idea out and work it, She has a book called Time Storms, where she speculates that missing time events are really these natural time storms that exist, and shows you all these correlations between them and how this might work. And it's one of those things where she may not be saying this is the answer, but she definitely presents it as a possibility and runs with it for a bit.
Yeah. I've got that right next to me, by the way.
Nice. Yeah. She did a good book on Men in Black. She did the best one, which I actually haven't finished reading. I kind of feel like we should do a show on it at some point. Is called Mind Monsters.
That's I was just going to say. I was just reading that recently, rereading that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. It's great. It's
exactly.
got great stories.
So she would be the one person I can think of, and again, I could say, Whitley Strieber, but Strieber is all over the place. Jenny Randles isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to talk to Whitley Strieber, but I've also never reached out to Whitley, and I know lots of people who are friends with Whitley. I'm sure I could get him if I tried. I would assume, I hope. But I don't know that he really again, is it going to add anything to the conversation for me to talk to Whitley?
He is talking about Kundalini a lot recently.
Has he?
Okay.
Oh,
well, yeah. I still listen to it, and he'll like talk about something really interesting, and then he'll have, like, he recently had somebody on who was talking about Radu Seminar and Transylvanian Sunrise again. And I'm like, really? This is what you're talking about? Like, as if it's some new revelation, and Peter Moon and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, it's just, I think he's to put it in a very nice way. And I, think Whitley's a very interesting and genuine person. I think he just sort of accepts whatever comes and, lets it go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he has been talking about Kundalini, and I think, he's
You figure that might have also come from Jeremy Vaeni.
Could very well have been. Yes,
because
exactly.
Vaeni's friends with him and was hosting Dreamland for a while and stuff.
That's right.
So, yeah. I mean, and like I said, it's not that I don't want to have Whitley on. I do. But as per the question, if I could interview anyone, it would be Jenny Randles. She would be the one I'd like to have on the show. And I don't know anyone who really knows her. That's the other thing. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure I'm not, she's also trans. And so a lot of her Twitter posts have been about that in the more recent ones I saw. So I don't know if she's actually all that interested in the paranormal stuff now. Because this is a more relevant issue, I think, for her at this point,
Sure.
And having been someone who was trans in the 70s.
Yeah.
That's
lived through a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So a very interesting person, a very smart person, a very open-minded person who, like I said, does not get the respect in this field that she should.
Absolutely agreed. Mm-hmm.
So like I said, it took me a bit. I had to sit there and think about it, and suddenly I'm just like, oh, no, I know the answer. The answer is Jenny Randles.
Yeah.
And as far as making that happen, I don't know, unless somebody knows her and could reach out and say, hey, you should go Where Did the Road Go?
For some reason, I wanted to say that Go Rightly had some contact, but I could be wrong. Oh, no, I'm thinking of Annie Jacobson.
Okay.
I see.
All right. So let's see. We have probably time for one more here. Joshua Bennett just says, thank you for all the years of the podcast. You effing rock. Thank you. Thank you for listening. So he did have a question after that. He says, are you religious and or Christian? And if so, how does your Kundalini awakening, how do you work that into your religious views? So I've never been religious. My father's side of my family was religious, but my father really wasn't. Like, my parents both played kind of lip service to being Christian, but they never went to church. They never,
Sure.
It was more because that's what you're supposed to be. That's what you are. My grandparents on my father's side were very religious. And I spent a long time talking to my grandmother about different religious issues and stuff like that. But I never really got into religion like that. And then as I started learning history and started learning the history of the Catholic Church and all the horrendous things they had done over the years, I started really hating religion. And just, especially when I was a teenager, I was very anti-religious, extremely anti-religious. And there was plenty of metal that kind of went along with that same theme. So, over time, however, my views on that have changed significantly, where I still kind of consider myself anti-religious. I'm very spiritual. But I don't really have a problem with anyone's religion unless they're forcing it on someone.
Sure.
So I have friends who are devout Christians. I have clients for my computer service who are churches, and I love sitting and talking to some of these people. At the same time, I'm friends with people who are Satanists. I'm friends with people who are atheists, Jewish, Islamic. Just everything, right down the line. I know people from all different religions, and, it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. It's because everyone's on their own path. And as long, look at Tim Renner. Tim Renner is Catholic again. He wasn't for a long time, and he's returned to that.
Right.
I'm not sure where you fall, Chris, as far as what you believe.
Oh God, I'm completely unique in that. I do believe in certain aspects of Christianity, but it's hard for me to get away from how I was raised,
right.
Which has this very this weird syncretic mix of Hinduism, Vedanta, and Sufism, and Zoroastrianism, and new mysticism, and sort of Catholic mysticism. Because if people don't know, I talk about this a lot. My parents were sort of hippie '60s followers of the Indian mystic Meher Baba, who had a resurgence in like the '60s as like a love guru, but also has this, as I've talked a lot about before, this very weird, interesting, esoteric like history that exists prior to, World War II, and like he wrote a book that Evans Wentz wrote like the foreword and introduction to, and all these people were sort of he was involved with all these interesting esoteric and occult people, and a lot of the sort of syncretic information that I have came from being a kid, and essentially I was reading about Hinduism and Sufism and Christianity and Zoroastrianism, and I was a pretty voracious reader as a kid, so I consumed a lot of that along with like mythology from Norse and Greek stuff. And so for me, it's kind of I think of it as all similar in the same stuff. I feel like religion is what humans do when they end up having some sort of spiritual experience or meeting somebody that provides a spiritual experience. And
I agree.
It's fallible in the same way that humans are fallible. So you have to be able to separate, what that original spark of, mysticism or spirituality was from that. So I do, personally, I do believe that there was probably a figure named, who was the Jesus Christ that people talk about. But I also think that, there was a Buddha probably, and there was Muhammad, that people don't really, a lot of the stuff that, especially it's going around now about, Muhammad is not really understanding what this person was. And I think Meher Baba might have been one of these people. Maybe Gurdjieff was. There are a lot of people, I think, that are out there that have, in the same way that, there are some of us that, there's this sort of human diversity out there. And there's, humans and animals and, a wide variety of consciousness. I think there might be some humans or people that exist in human form that have some sort of connection or way of their consciousness works that is more expanded than ours, so they are able to get a better sense of what's going on. I do think that also is filtering through people in the same way that we talk about like how Seth is filtered through Jane Roberts,
right?
Or channeling. So you have to really look around, I guess, and find. It's not something you can latch onto and say this person has all the answers necessarily. But I think there's something going on that we don't understand as humans that some people might have a better sense of, and I think those people, sometimes end up sparking religions that have nothing to do with what they were actually talking about.
Yes. Yeah. I always liked Crowley's statement of, what did he say? God is the same mountain named by different people with different paths to the top, but in the end, it's the same mountain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think Crowley, for all his, drawbacks and foibles and, maybe really terrible personality and aspects too. I mean, I don't actually know the truth of what Crowley was really like, but from hearing all the stories, but I do think he was one of those people. There was something that he was tapped into. And again, it's like you talk about, and it's like you can look at the specificity of what this person was talking about, but if you want to try to get to a real truth, you have to kind of take like the larger mouthfeel of what it is that they were talking about and kind of compare it and see how it compares to what other people have said. And I think from that, there was some stuff that Crowley was right on about, in terms of trying to figure out life and existence.
And you have someone with Crowley who wanted people to believe bad things about him.
That was his yes, absolutely.
So
yes, that's a good call out.
It's kind of like, so which one of those bad things were true, and how many of them were him just having a laugh that people believed the stuff?
Right. Yeah.
And where do you stand on all this, Saxon?
I don't know. I'm all over the place,
Okay.
I because the way I grew up, my family being in the South, like everybody was culturally Christian, somewhere or other.
Oh yeah.
But we had folks around that were Mormon. I went to a Catholic school for a while, and so I started picking up like all these things are ritualistically different, and there's bits and pieces of them that are different. And so that sort of influenced me pretty early. And then my mentor, until I got to college, kind of like what Chris was talking about, he was a big Lipinski, Gurdjieff guy, or Gurdjieff, excuse me. And so he would talk to me about different teachers. And those people might be like Jesus or Buddha or something like that. But I had my weird dream, I'm saying in air quotes, after my dad died, when I was on the couch, and I woke up on the couch and like the white Caucasian Jesus was standing outside of the door,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And I still, that doesn't bother me. But I go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I don't think that is any. I don't think a lot of times those forms, particularly if that's how you grew up, like I don't think that necessarily means anything in any way. It's
right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just like the times I've been taking psychedelics. Like it uses the imagery that.
Right.
But and I always point out, like, I was in the middle of anthropology and very annoyed that when we showed religious figures from the Middle East, they were always white people.
Right.
But so that sort of thing. Go ahead, Seriah.
Oh no, I was just laughing at that.
Oh yeah. But so I've got all that. My mom had her near-death experience before I was born, so that's sort of and there were no religious overtones to that, by the way. It was just she went through the tunnel. There was a figure there that told her that it wasn't her time and she needed to go back, and she did.
Yeah.
But all those things kind of set me up to not believe things traditionally within where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got to get out and travel more, I just kind of like take anything that fits me at that moment and use it. And I suppose it's a very chaos magic-esque approach. But if I have belief for it, it has meaning for that time. And then if the model doesn't fit for something I need, I don't use it.
Yeah, that's I absolutely. Have you either of you guys ever read the Huxley book, Aldous Huxley book, The Perennial Philosophy?
No,
I have not.
Yeah, I'd recommend it if you did. The term comes from Theosophy, and again, another Blavatsky. I think there was something Blavatsky tapped into,
yes,
or saw or witnessed or learned about that ended up, as people rightly have, pointed out, she ended up extrapolating on it and sort of, making her own syncretic, version of things that she sort of, you say ripped off or was influenced by. But that term, perennial philosophy, came from theology. And it's essentially this idea, and Aldous Huxley, the guy who wrote The Doors of Perception, he was this big sort of thinker from what the Doors got their name from. And he was like a mescaline guy, he was a very interesting writer, but he was also a Christian. And he talked a lot about this idea in this book, The Perennial Philosophy, about how in these different religions, and he talks about, Hinduism, he talks about Buddhism, he talks about Zoroastrianism, there is, what he refers to in the same way the Theosophists do as this central core that if you really do the research, you find that there are these, like, essentially what he says, there is a perennial philosophy, something that is all you find as far as you go back, you can find at the core of all of these different ways of thought and religions that have came out of them, that there is these sort of core mystical, trappings that you can find that might be the closest thing we can get to some sort of truth when you're asking for, like, a reason for life. And it's not anything, crazy. It's stuff like, we're connected, and there is a reason for us being here, and that consciousness is somehow greater than what we see. Things that I think a lot of us, what we talk about, I don't want to say take for granted, but we at least talk about as being possibly true quite a bit. And it's an interesting book. I like it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I read it as a teenager and I reread it recently, and it's a really good I think salient way of thinking about things. It's a little outdated, but it still is worthwhile.
And I don't remember why, but someone on Facebook at some point years ago accused me of being anti-Christian or hating Christians or something like that. And I was like, what? Where would you get that from? Like, that's, like, I don't. And a bunch of my friends who are very devout Christians who are good friends of mine were like, you have no idea what you're talking about, And they're like, he's never been anything but completely respectful to my beliefs and, so on and so forth. And I'm like, thank you. Okay, good. When I was 15, yeah, that might have been true, but I grew out of that because, I evolved. I learned more things.
Yeah.
I think religion can be used for really evil things and does tend to be, but it's not the core beliefs that are a problem. It's the way they're used to manipulate people.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. 100%.
Well, we are out of time, so we'll have to answer the other questions in a Patreon. But thank you, everyone, for the questions. And thank you guys for this very weird show.
Yeah. Apologies for my digital trickstery-ish.
Oh, my God. I thought you were actually about to get caught in the loop again for a second, Chris.
Trick. Yeah.
No, the second time it happened, I thought you were messing with us.
Yeah.
All right.
That would have been great.
Thanks, guys.
I'm not that smart.
Yeah. Thanks, Seriah.
I want to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons. I can't do this without you, so thank you for supporting the show. And know that every positive thing that comes out of this show is partially because of you. I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons who are pledging $10 or more a month. Greg Ross, John Blackburn, Madeline J., Marty Garza, Matt in Delaware, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Marthartha, Midnight Review presents Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Billuminati, Bright Rectangle, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy and Communicable, Corey Nelson, Craig Parmenter, Diane B., MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, History and Coffee, J. Otto Bullitt, Jack Huntington, James Lindsay, Jim and Sophie, John Mattingly, John Bracken, Jonathan Frost, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Shurek, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linda from Michigan, Linz Jackson K., MJ Armstrong, Mark Shoemaker, Mark Brady, Paul Jeffries, Perry Peters, Philosopher of Mirrors, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Sarah Horgan, Sasha McHale, Schmooples, Devourer of Mortal Souls, Stacy Sherwood, Stevie Norman, Strange Stories with the Seeker and Skeptic podcast, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Varush K., Victoria, Vincent Trewell, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Annabelle Smith, Caroline Walker, TDT Skunkworks, Craig Sagastumi, and Matthew Brown. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. All right, the rest of those questions we will get to in a Patreon-only segment. I'm also going to put up all the other weirdness that happened separately for patrons, because there was a whole bunch of weird stuff with Chris's Skype going on. I have no idea how to explain that. I assume it was just getting stuck and buffering, but it's never done anything like that before. So I have a few new patrons to welcome. CJ, Comrade Max Fenning, Stephen Brown, and Thomas Price. Thank you all for joining up. And if you want to become a patron, it's only $3 a month, and you get extra content all month long, almost every show, plus extra stuff on top of that. So it's a real bargain at $3 a month, and it helps the show out greatly. Plus, you get to throw out questions for AMAs like this on a fairly regular basis. On a sad note, we lost Christopher O'Brien this week. He was having, I believe, a heart attack and tried to drive himself to the hospital, from what I understand. I'm not 100% sure about that. I haven't had him on in quite a while. I don't remember what year I had him on, but I'm going to go and try and repost that show. He wrote a book, among others, he wrote a book called Stalking the Herd, which is really the definitive book on cattle mutilations and such. And I think we did a 2-part show, and if we did a Patreon segment, I'll include that as well. But he also played music, and he gave me a bunch of it when he was on. And let's see, what is this dated? That's not helpful. I'm gonna have to go back into the archive and dig those out, maybe remaster them a bit and post it. I had always wanted to have him back on and never got a chance to reach out to him. So that sucks. That's a loss to the Fortiana community. See you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.